Have you ever had that moment where you finish reading something like an article or a report or even a novel, and you kind of get to the end and you're like, okay, I should know what I just read. But then like if someone asked you to summarize it, you just totally blank.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Right. It's like surprisingly universal,
Yeah.
even for us adults who like we rely on reading all the time.
Yeah, totally.
And, I think for someone who's like, tuning into a deep dive like this, it's probably safe to say that you're not just like aiming to just get through the words right. You want to really like understand what's being said.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's what we're diving into today, that gap between actually reading the words and comprehending them.
Yeah, like how do we actually make meaning from what we read? How do we know that we understand what we read? And that's what's so cool about this deep dive.
Yeah.
We're going on this exploration into how adult readers manage their own understanding. Like, think of it as a look under the hood of your reading brain.
Ooh, I like that.
Our guide for this journey is Linda Baker's research from 1989. And she kind of synthesized a lot of what was known at the time about this crucial skill.
So we're talking about metacognition and comprehension monitoring.
Yes.
Okay, so let's unpack that for a sec. Metacognition, in the context of reading, is basically like being aware of your own thinking as you read.
Right. Like having that internal narrator.
Yes, exactly. It's that little voice that's like, wait, am I getting this?
Exactly.
And then comprehension monitoring is the active process of like checking in with yourself as you're reading to make sure you are actually understanding what's going on.
Yeah, you're not just passively letting the words wash over you.
Totally, yeah. You're not just letting your eyes scan the page.
Exactly.
So what we want to uncover in this deep dive is how adults think they're understanding, how well they actually do understand, and how accurate they are at like judging their own comprehension abilities. And Baker's work is going to give us a great framework for looking at all of this.
It really...
What I think is also really interesting is this isn't just like a one-size-fits-all
Right.
picture. The research shows that like these metacognitive skills can differ a lot depending on factors like how much you know about a certain topic, your general reading skills, your academic background, even
Yeah, for sure.
even like where you are in your adult development.
Absolutely.
So we're going to be getting into a really nuanced landscape of how we read and understand.
Yeah, this is really cool stuff.
So how do researchers even figure out what's going on in our minds when we're reading?
Well, one of the main ways is through self-reporting. This involves techniques like asking people to think aloud as they read, keep a reading log, fill out questionnaires about their reading strategies, or reflect on what they did after they finished reading.
Oh, so it's kind of like trying to get a verbal snapshot of their experience.
Exactly.
But how reliable are these self-reports? Because, what we think we do and what we actually do isn't always the same thing, is it?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And actually, research has shown that there can be discrepancies.
Yeah.
For instance, Brennan and colleagues, their studies, and as well as Pfeiffer and Glover, they found that what students said they were doing while reading wasn't always exactly matching what researchers observed.
Oh, interesting.
For example, people might overestimate how often they use strategies like predicting what's coming next, or underestimate things like going back and rereading parts.
Right. So there's a little bit of a gap between our like perceived reading habits and our actual ones.
Yeah, that's fair to say.
But these reports, they must give us some good information, right?
Oh, they absolutely do. While we need to take them with a grain of salt, they offer valuable insights into those processes that are happening when we read.
Yeah.
So, for instance, when we look at what expert readers like grad students or professionals report doing, we see some interesting patterns.
Oh, okay. So like what does the reading routine of an expert look like based on what they say?
Well, based on Smith's research, expert readers will usually start with a clear goal in mind. They'll actively try to connect what they're reading with stuff they already know, sort of building those bridges between the text and their own knowledge. And they're really good at identifying the most important information and filtering out the less critical details.
So they're not just passively taking in words.
No, not at all.
It's like a really active way to read.
Right. They're constantly checking their understanding, asking themselves questions, really engaging with the text.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So what happens when these experts hit a snag, like they run into something confusing? How do they handle those comprehension beatdowns?
Bereiter and Bird, their research found that experts have a whole bunch of strategies for when that happens. So they might, restate a difficult section in our own words, go back and reread earlier parts for more context, or even try to figure out, okay, is this information going to be explained later?
Oh, interesting.
And sometimes they'll even try to really define the problem to solve it.
Oh, so it's like they're approaching it as a puzzle. That's cool. Now, you mentioned earlier how much you know about a topic plays a role. So how does being an expert in a subject affect how we read about it?
Oh, this is where Lindeberg's research comes in. He compared law professors to law students who were novices, and the findings were amazing. The professors, they focused on the big picture, getting an overall feel for the text before getting into the details.
Okay.
They reread analytically, highlighted key arguments, and they synthesized information, and they critically evaluated everything.
Wow.
The novices, though, they tended to get stuck on individual words, even if they were familiar words,
Right.
but just used in a specific legal way.
Right.
And when they didn't understand something, they kind of blamed themselves.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So it's not just about general reading skills. It's about having that insider knowledge.
Right, because you kind of have that framework for how the whole field thinks and communicates.
Exactly. And Afflerbach's work really highlights this too. He found that even within, fields like chemistry and anthropology, doctoral students use different strategies depending on whether they were reading in their own field or another one.
Oh, wow.
So our familiarity with the topic and our goals, they shape how we approach a text.
It's like our expertise acts as a lens.
It really does.
That's fascinating. Okay, so we see how expert readers approach things, but what about the rest of us? If you're just like a generally better reader, how do your skills differ from someone who struggles more?
Well, research consistently shows that there are differences.
Okay.
Studies by Gambrill and Heathington, as well as Meeks and his colleagues, they found that better readers, they have better metacognitive awareness compared to those who have more difficulty.
So even within a relatively similar group of adults, these differences pop up.
Yeah, they do.
So where do these differences lie? Is it about how much they can remember from what they read?
Interestingly, Kaufman found that the main differences are often in the strategies they use to understand, not just remember.
Oh, okay.
So better readers, they use more active strategies when they're struggling, again, trying to figure things out.
So it's about that internal processing.
Exactly.
What are some examples of these strategies that good readers use?
Well, Spring had some really cool findings. Good readers, they'll connect new information to stuff they already know,
Huh?
identify those logical relationships in the text, and pinpoint the main ideas. And they also do a lot of critical reading, evaluating the content, thinking about it.
Oh, interesting.
Now, the surprising part is there weren't huge differences in things like note-taking or outlining.
Really? You'd think poorer readers would study less.
I know, right? But Spring suggests that maybe poor readers rely too much on those lower-level techniques to compensate for their weaker comprehension.
So it's like trying to fix a leaky faucet by just mopping up the water.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
got to get to the source of the problem.
So when good and poor readers hit a tough spot in a text, how do their approaches differ?
Kletzine found that when the text was easy or moderately difficult, both groups used similar strategies.
Oh.
But when it got really hard, the poorer readers tended to give up easier.
Oh, so they didn't use as many strategies.
Yeah, they just kind of threw in the towel while the better readers kept pushing through.
So resilience is key.
It really seems to be.
Yeah.
And Fisher and Mandel found that even the emotional response plays a role.
Really?
Yeah, poorer readers often felt bad about themselves when they struggled,
Yeah, I can see that.
while better readers kind of used that as feedback to try different approaches.
Oh, so it's like a feedback loop.
Exactly. It helps them adjust their learning.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, we've talked about all this awareness and different reader types, but does all this metacognitive stuff actually lead to better performance, like on tests or other measures of learning?
Well, generally, yes.
Okay, good.
Block found that students who said they monitored their comprehension, they did better on tests and had higher GPAs overall.
That makes sense.
Fisher and Mandel also found that being able to regulate your comprehension, so knowing what to do when you're not understanding, might be even more important than just knowing you're not understanding.
Oh, so it's not enough to realize you're lost. You need to know how to get back on track.
Exactly. You need that map and compass.
Are there any particular strategies that are linked to doing better on tests?
A great example is Garner and Alexander's study, where they encouraged students to predict test questions while they were reading. And those students actually did much better on the test afterwards.
Wow, so thinking ahead like that really helps.
It seems to, yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about using more strategies. It was about using that one specific strategy that was relevant to the task.
So having the right tool for the job.
Exactly.
Now, what about the number of strategies someone has? Does having a wider range matter?
Absolutely. NIST and colleagues and Ryan, their research shows that having more strategies you can use is a strong predictor of how well you'll do on tests. And Ryan also found that students who used more complex criteria to judge their own understanding, not just focusing on facts but going deeper, they also tended to get better grades.
So being a metacognitive all-star really gives you an edge.
It seems to.
Does this advantage extend beyond school, though? What about in the workplace?
Mikolecki and his team looked into that. They studied nurses and electronics technicians, and they found that those who were rated as top performers, they were more likely to use metacognitive strategies like self-questioning and focusing on key ideas when they were reading work-related materials.
Interesting.
And what's really cool is that their basic literacy skills didn't differ that much.
Really?
So it seems like those metacognitive aspects might be even more important for success on the job.
So it's not just about reading the words, it's about really understanding and applying them.
Exactly.
That's really fascinating. So zooming in on individual reading habits for a moment, are there any patterns in how people use these strategies?
Chiaffi's research found distinct clusters of strategy use among successful college students. Some relied heavily on the text itself, really focusing on the words and structure. Others were more focused on bringing their own background knowledge into it. And then there were some who did a mix of both, interacting with the text and monitoring their understanding at the same time.
So it's not just about whether you use a strategy, but how you combine them.
Exactly. And Alexander's research backs this up.
What about among those who struggle more? Are there patterns there too?
Block's research with remedial reading students found two main patterns. He called them integrators and non-integrators.
Oh, interesting names.
The integrators were a lot like expert readers. They tried to make connections, paid attention to the text structure, and used fix-up strategies when they needed them. The non-integrators, though, they focus more on details and their own feelings of frustration, not really engaging with the meaning.
So the integrators had a more effective approach.
It seems like it, yeah. And they also showed better progress academically.
Now, you mentioned earlier about Ryan's work on beliefs about knowledge. How do those beliefs actually play a role in how we monitor our comprehension?
Ryan said that whether we see knowledge as absolute, like there's only one right answer, or more complex and evolving, it influences how we judge our understanding.
Okay.
He found that those who saw knowledge as absolute, they focused on memorizing facts, but those who saw it as more complex, they wanted to really understand the connections between ideas and how to apply the information.
So like one is about getting the right answer and the other is about understanding the bigger picture.
Exactly. And those who used more complex criteria to evaluate their understanding, particularly those focused on deep understanding and applying knowledge, they got better grades.
Oh, so it pays to have a more nuanced view of knowledge.
It seems to, yeah.
Fascinating. Okay, so we've seen how adults think about their reading and the strategies they use. Now, how good are adults at monitoring their comprehension as they read? You mentioned something called the error detection paradigm. What's that about?
Oh, that's a common research method used to study comprehension monitoring.
Okay.
Basically, they give people texts with intentional errors, like contradictions or nonsensical statements, and ask them to spot those errors.
So the idea is if you're paying attention, you should catch them?
Exactly.
So how good are we at this?
The surprising thing is, we're not that great.
Really?
Yeah, lots of research shows that we only catch about half the errors on average.
Wow, that's lower than I would have thought.
I know, right? Studies by Baker and Anderson and others have all found this.
So why do we miss so many? You'd think as adults we'd be better at noticing when something's off.
Well, Baker's research in 1979 gave us some clues. She found that even if someone doesn't say they see an error, it doesn't mean they didn't notice something.
Oh, okay.
Often they'll use fix-up strategies like rereading or making inferences without explicitly saying, hey, there's a problem here.
So our brains are trying to make sense of it, even if we don't pinpoint the exact issue.
Exactly. We're wired for coherence.
That makes sense. But now researchers are really careful about how they design these studies, right?
Oh, absolutely. Because if you tell people to expect errors, they'll read differently.
Right, you're going to be on high alert.
Exactly. And Baker also said that just because someone misses one type of problem doesn't mean they're a bad monitor overall.
Why is that?
Because we use different standards to evaluate our comprehension.
Oh, okay.
You might miss a small contradiction, but still be checking if the information makes sense with what you already know.
Right, so missing one thing doesn't mean you're not doing other checks.
Exactly. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
So what are these different standards for evaluating comprehension?
Baker outlined 7 main ones.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, there's the lexical standard, which is just making sure you understand the words being used.
Okay, that's basic.
Then there's syntactic, which is about grammar and sentence structure.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's external consistency, which is about checking if the information fits with what you know about the world. Then there's propositional cohesiveness, which focuses on how well the ideas within a sentence or a few sentences connect.
Okay.
Then we have internal consistency, which is about looking for contradictions within the text itself.
Uh-huh.
And then structural cohesiveness, which is about whether the organization and themes of the text fit together.
Okay.
And finally, informational completeness, which is about whether the text gives you all the info you need for your purpose.
Wow, that's quite a list. And some are definitely harder than others, right?
Oh yeah, totally. Spotting a nonsense word is easy, but finding a hidden contradiction, that takes more brain power.
Right. You got to connect the dots.
Exactly. So Baker looked at how college students use these standards.
And did they use them equally?
No, not at all.
Okay, tell me more.
Nonsense words were the easiest to spot. Then came problems with prior knowledge, and the hardest were internal contradictions.
Makes sense. Some require deeper thinking.
Right. And the higher ability students, especially when given clear instructions, they were much better at spotting all the problems.
So instructions matter.
They do, yeah. And those higher ability students, they used more of those standards, even ones they weren't told about.
So they have a more diverse toolkit.
Exactly. Now, the lower ability students, they relied heavily on just understanding the words.
So kind of like younger readers.
Yeah, very similar. This supports Ryan's findings, too. The better students use more and more sophisticated standards.
But even if you know all the standards, you don't always use them consistently, right?
That's what Baker found later on, yeah. Knowing and doing are two different things.
Right. That makes sense. So we've talked about asking people about the problems they find, but are there other ways to see if they're monitoring their comprehension? You mentioned process measures earlier.
Yes. Those are things like measuring how long someone spends reading a section or tracking their eye movements.
So we're getting a real-time view.
Exactly. Baker and Anderson, their study showed that people spend more time on inconsistent sentences and look back more, even without being told to look for errors.
So their behavior shows they're reacting to it.
Yeah. Grave and colleagues, their eye-tracking studies also show that people react to inconsistencies even when they don't explicitly say they notice them.
Wow. So our eyes give us away.
They do. And informed readers, they reread those inconsistent parts more.
So it's like their brains are flagging something's off, even if they haven't fully processed it.
Right. And Green and colleagues found that reading times increase when a phrase doesn't fit with the rest of the text.
So we're always checking for coherence, even subconsciously.
It seems so, yeah.
You even mentioned a study that used skin responses.
Oh yeah, Tikhomirov and Klotko's study used galvanic skin responses, which are changes in your skin's electrical conductivity.
Okay.
They found that even when people didn't say they noticed impossible scenarios, their skin responses changed.
So their bodies knew something was wrong.
Exactly. It's like a subconscious detection system.
That's so cool. So what factors affect whether we catch these problems?
Well, there's a bunch. Whether we're told to expect problems, what kind of problem it is, why we're reading, what criteria we're using to judge, and even our personal threshold for deciding something's a problem.
That makes sense. You mentioned some mixed findings about whether main idea problems are easier to detect.
Yeah, it's not clear why the results are mixed. Some think main idea problems are easier because they disrupt the whole text more.
That makes sense.
But others found no difference between main idea and detail problems. It probably depends on how the inconsistency is presented.
So context matters.
Absolutely. And how information is framed matters too. Glenberg and his team, they found that if contradictory info is presented as new, it's harder to spot.
Why is that?
They think it's because we don't try to connect it back to earlier info as much.
Oh, so we don't check it as carefully.
Yeah. But Baker and Wagner, they found the opposite for external consistency. False info presented as already known was actually harder to catch.
Oh, so we're more trusting of stuff that sounds like a fact.
It seems like it. And for internal inconsistencies, Epstein and his colleagues said both pieces of info need to be active in our working memory at the same time.
That makes sense. You got to have both to compare them.
Right. But even then, we don't always spot them. So while it's necessary, it's not always enough.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about how we find problems. What do we do after we realize something's not right? How do we try to fix our understanding?
That's where regulation comes in. Collins and Smith, they categorize those fix-up strategies based on how disruptive they are.
Okay.
You can ignore the problem and hope it clears up later, reread, look ahead, or even consult outside sources.
So a range of options. Which ones do we tend to use naturally?
Baker and Anderson found that we do spontaneously reread when we hit contradictions.
Huh.
But Alexander and his team found we don't often look back to answer questions.
Interesting. But prompting people to reread can help, right?
Yeah, Alessi and others found that encouraging rereading improves comprehension.
So a little nudge can go a long way.
It can. And Bloom's research on lookups, where people could consult explanations, also showed improvement, and they were smart about when they used those explanations.
So some monitoring was happening.
Definitely.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. How good are we at judging our overall understanding after we've finished reading? You mentioned this self-assessment research.
Yes. This is about how accurately we judge the final product of our reading.
Okay.
And it kind of started separately from metacognition research, growing out of studies on test confidence.
Interesting. So is it easier to judge past performance than future performance?
It seems so, yeah. Research consistently shows that judgments about how we've already done are more accurate than predictions about how we will do.
That makes sense. It's easier to reflect on something you've finished.
Right. Now, Glenberg and Epstein, their work on the illusion of knowing and poorly calibrated comprehension is key here.
Tell me more about that.
Initially, they talked about the illusion of knowing, where people said they understood stuff even when they missed contradictions.
So we think we know more than we do.
Yeah. Later, they refined it to poorly calibrated comprehension, meaning our confidence doesn't match our actual understanding.
And they found that happens a lot.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Mm.
We overestimate our understanding even when we miss obvious problems.
Yikes. That's a bit worrying. How did they study this in more detail?
Yeah, they started focusing on how confident people were in drawing inferences about the main themes.
Okay.
And even then, they found poor calibration. But they also found that people could recalibrate after getting feedback.
Oh, so feedback helps us be more realistic.
It does. Now, here's a weird thing. They found people were more poorly calibrated in their own areas of expertise.
Really? You'd think you'd be better at judging your own field.
Right. But they think it's because we rely on our general sense of being an expert instead of really assessing our understanding of the specific material.
So overconfidence can blind us.
It seems like it.
Yeah.
And they found this poor calibration wasn't just for inferences, it happened for simpler tasks too.
Wow, so it's a broad issue.
Yeah. And they also found that we often judge based on familiarity, not actual knowledge from the text.
So we need to be careful about relying on that feeling of, oh yeah, I know this.
Absolutely. But they did find that if you do a pretest and check your answers, it can improve calibration, but only if the pretest is relevant.
So targeted self-assessment is key.
It seems to be, yeah. Other researchers have looked at this too. Maki and Berry, they found that better students were better at predicting which parts of a text they'd answer correctly on a test.
Okay.
And poorer students, their predictions got worse the longer they waited to take the test.
So time plays a role, especially for those who struggle more.
Yeah, it seems so. Presley and his team looked at how ready students felt for a test at different times.
Okay.
And, no surprise, they were most accurate after they'd taken the test.
Makes sense, you know, for sure then.
Right, but what was interesting is that their perceived readiness wasn't strongly correlated with their grades or actual test scores.
Oh, so how we feel isn't always a good indicator.
It's not always reliable, no. But they did find that adding questions during reading helped students judge their preparedness better.
So those little checks are useful.
Yeah. Maki and Sweat, they looked at narrative texts and free recall, and they found better prediction accuracy there compared to some studies that used expository texts and multiple choice.
Interesting. So the way you test comprehension might matter.
It seems to. Schammer and Serber, they found that when people had a simple reading goal and the text was hard, they showed the biggest illusion of knowing.
So we overestimate when we're not really digging deep.
Exactly. Deeper goals led to better self-assessment, especially with tough texts. And verbal ability played a role too. Those with bigger vocabularies were more accurate.
So having the tools to understand helps us judge our understanding better.
It seems so. And they also found that the type of summaries people wrote reflected their self-assessment.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Those who truly understood wrote good summaries.
Oh.
Those who knew they were struggling wrote okay summaries, missing some points but on the right track. But those with the illusion of knowing, their summaries actually misrepresented the text.
Wow, so they thought they understood, but they actually got it wrong.
Yeah, it highlights how misunderstanding can lead to totally inaccurate self-assessment.
That's really important to keep in mind. So all this self-assessment research shows we have a blind spot when it comes to judging our own comprehension.
Definitely. It's something we need to be aware of.
Now, we've mostly talked about adults in general, but you said earlier that where we are in our adult development matters too.
It does. While a lot of research focused on kids and teens, we're realizing that metacognitive skills keep developing throughout adulthood.
Okay.
Kitchener, she made a distinction between basic metacognition, which is about specific tasks, and epistemic cognition, which is a deeper understanding of knowledge itself.
Oh, interesting. So one is more about the task at hand, and the other is about the big picture of knowledge.
Exactly. And she said this epistemic cognition develops more during adolescence and young adulthood.
And that ties back to Ryan's work on dualistic versus relativistic thinking, right?
Yes. College upperclassmen were more relativistic, valuing deeper comprehension, which fits with Perry's model of intellectual development.
So our view of knowledge gets more sophisticated as we mature.
It seems so. Otero and Campanario looked at high school students, and they found that older students were better at spotting inconsistencies, had less illusion of knowing, and made better choices about how to fix their comprehension.
So even in late adolescence, there's a progression.
Definitely. But what happens after college? Do these skills get better, or do they decline as we age?
That's a good question. What does the research say?
The evidence is mixed. Research on metamemory, which is about our memory abilities, has shown improvement, decline, and no change in older adults.
Oh, so it's not clear-cut?
Not really, no. And research on concept learning and learning strategies has shown some decline, but the specific task really matters.
So it's complex.
Yeah. Zabruki and his colleagues, they found no age difference in inconsistency detection, but more education did lead to better detection.
So staying mentally active helps.
It seems so. Interestingly, they also found some evidence that older adults might be better calibrated than younger adults.
Oh, that's interesting.
But overall, we need more research to know for sure how metacognitive skills change in later life.
So there's still a lot to learn.
Definitely.
Now, since we know adults aren't always the best at monitoring their comprehension, what can we do to improve?
Well, there's a lot of research on interventions to boost these skills in adults, and many are adapted from techniques that work for kids and teens.
Okay.
There's modeling and think alouds, where teachers show their thinking process out loud.
So you can see how an expert does it.
Exactly. And then there's reciprocal teaching and cooperative learning, where students work together and help each other understand.
So learning from your peers.
Yeah. And there's also training in specific strategies, like summarizing and asking yourself questions while reading.
Okay.
And finally, self-control training, which is about learning to manage your own learning process.
So it's about becoming a more aware and active learner.
Exactly. It's about making those internal processes more visible and giving people tools to engage with the text.
And you said think-alouds can be used for diagnosis, too. How does that work?
If a student talks through their thinking while reading, teachers can see where they're getting tripped up, what inferences they're making, and what strategies they're using.
So it's like a window into their mind.
Exactly. It helps tailor instruction to their needs.
That's cool. And what about training in summarizing and self-questioning? Does that work for adults?
Research says it does. Brozo and his team found that training in question-answer relationships helped people do better on multiple-choice tests.
Okay.
King and her team found that summarizing helped with essays, and self-questioning helped with objective tests.
So matching the strategy to the assessment type is important.
It is, yeah. And Bullagdy found that how well self-questioning works depends on how hard the text is.
Makes sense. Harder texts might need different approaches.
Right. Now, there are also interventions that teach a bunch of strategies together.
Oh, so like a metacognitive toolbox.
Exactly. These can be effective, especially when learning with others. But it can be hard to transfer those skills to when you're learning on your own.
So you need that independent practice.
Yeah. More comprehensive programs like LTME, which stands for linking, extracting, transforming, monitoring, and extending, have shown better results.
So it's not just about learning skills, it's about learning how to manage the whole process.
Exactly. And remember, even successful students can benefit.
Oh yeah, everyone can improve.
Lundeberg found that even high-achieving law students got better at analyzing cases after getting training in specific strategies and self-control.
So it's not just for those who are struggling.
No, everyone can learn to be more metacognitively aware.
And this applies beyond academics too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Research has shown that better comprehension monitoring can help patients understand medical advice, which could improve their health.
That's huge.
It is.
Yeah.